Hey guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about the mixer in FL Studio. So to open up and close the mixer, you go to this button here, View Mixer, like that. You can also press F9 to enable and disable the mixer. Let's move it here a bit. Okay, so here are all of the tracks that we have right now in our mixer. You can also choose different views of the mixer. So let's say you want compact, you can see all of these different tracks here. There's a lot of them. And the mixer is basically where you would send all of your sounds and create different effects. You can set volumes, you can pan them, and you can group different things together so they sound like one. You can just put on different effects to it. So let's say you want to compress sounds together, or you want to create reverbs, delays, all of the different stuff. EQ, for instance, which is very important to do. And you do that all in the mixer here. So that is why the mixer is very important and what makes your track becomes live, you know. First track here is the master track. So the master track is where all of the sound will output through FL Studio. So all of the sound that you hear from your speakers would come through through the master track. So that is basically the output, the sound output of FL Studio. So all of the tracks combined will output through the master channel. Then we have all of the individual tracks in the mixer here. So what you can do to assign these different tracks to the mixer is to go to the channel rack here and select whatever pattern you want to have, or if you want to select all of the different instruments in your channel rack, then you will see this dialog here that you can set whatever mixer channel you want that sound to be assigned to in the mixer. So let's say I want my other classical acoustic sound here to be set to insert 3, then you will see the insert 3 is now selected here. And you can rename color and icon. So let's say I want this to be named as our instrument in the channel rack, our track here in channel rack. I can set a color here as well. So now you can see that this is the track in the mixer and this is the track that is linked to it. So the track in the channel rack, the classical acoustic, is linked to the mixer channel number 3 here in our mixer. So all of the sounds that comes through the classical acoustic sound here, so let's say that I play this sound, it will output through this mixer channel first, through all of these settings here. And what I mean by the settings here is all of the things that you will set here, which I will go through in a moment here. And when that is done, it will output through the master channel. And on the master channel, you can also have a set of plugins here as well that will affect all of the tracks in the mixer. So let's take a look at this right-hand side of the mixer. As you can see here, we have different slots. So all of the slots here is basically space for you to open up different effect plugins. So let's say that we want this classical acoustic sound to have a compressor. Then you can go to here Dynamics and Fruity Compressor, for instance, which is a Fruity Loop built-in compressor plugin. And now I can set the different effects for this compressor to be affecting only this sound, or only whatever is outputted through mixer channel 3. You can also combine different effect plugins. So let's say that you want a compressor first, and then you want a delay plugin, for instance. So now you have the compressor and the delay plugins after each other. Then you can also set how much of the effect you want to be outputted through this sound here. So let's say that I only want half of the compression, and the other half would be not compressed sound or not compressed signal. And then you can set the same thing with the delay. You can choose how much you want, or you can choose all of the settings here, that all of the signal is coming through these settings, through these plugins. So basically what you do here is to just set how much of the signal you want to be affected of this plugin here. You can also enable and disable each of the plugins here. So let's say you want to A and B different settings, you want to try them out. You can listen to your track and disable and enable them. That is very handy to use. Then you have an EQ section here. So you can EQ your sound with this graphical interface here. You can also do it with these meters here, like that. And you have different settings here as well, so you can set the different X and Y angles of this EQ, like that. You can use this EQ, but what I do most often is to choose an EQ from the plugins here. And you have a lot of, like, a very good different EQ plugins from FL. This one is pretty good, but we have another plugin here. Let's replace that with the Parametric EQ2. And this is a very nice, it sounds good, and it's very transparent, so you won't have your sound be affected or colored by this EQ. So it's very nice to use. It's very easy to use as well. It looks all very similar to FabFilter plugins, which I like a lot. So Fruity Loops has this built-in, which is very nice. And you can see you have different tonality of the EQs as well here. You can see where the sub should be of the EQ, bass, low mid, mid, high mid, and so on and so forth. So you can see what you're actually doing here. So let's say that you have a sound that have a lot of bass, but you want to get rid of the sub, then you know that you should go down around here to get rid of the sub, basically. Resize the mixer window by doing like this and like that. And as I showed you before, you can choose different view settings of the mixer. What I use most often is this extra large, because I get I get a very nice overview of the tracks here. I can see the signal coming through and all of these stuff. I'm also going to show you in a moment what all of these settings does. And you can also see the different plugins named here in each of the tracks. So you necessarily don't have to go to the right-hand side, but you know, they are there anyway. So you can just take a look at the selected track here. But let's say that you're out of focus. Let's say you're somewhere here. You can see that these plugins are set on this track, so you don't have to select that track to see the plugins here. One thing that I really like to do in the mixer is to go to the view here and set the track inspector on left side. That would show the plugins on this side instead, and then I don't have to really go to this side. But this is how I prefer it. Look at the individual mixer channel track here. So first you have the track name here and track number. Then you have enable and disable. You have the panning here. Then you have the volume meter and volume level. After that, we have track latency, we have arm disk recording, stereo separation, and you can swap left and right channels here. Here you have the amount of stereo separation that you want. You can do it like that. Then we have the names of the plugins here. Then we have enable effect slots, so you can enable or disable all of these plugins here. And that is it for the individual mixer channel here. As well is to, let's say I select one of these mixer channels here. I can select in the channel rack here, I can select, let's say, all of the drums here. And I'll go to the mixer here and just right click and channel routing, route selected channels starting from this track. So now you can see all of these selected instruments here, selected tracks in the channel rack, are routed to the mixer. So now you can see, instead of creating or assigning all of these individual tracks to a separate mixer track, then renaming them, color them, and so on and so forth. So now all of this is done automatically, and by choosing to route these tracks to the mixer. So now they are renamed and colored and everything like that. So that is very nice to use, and you will see all of these here. So let's say that I want to put on a reverb on a snare, for instance. So now I have the slots here on the left-hand side. So I have the snare mixer channel selected, and I can go to, let's say, here I want a reverb. So let's go to the Fruity Reverb 2 here. You can see I have a reverb on just the snare here. A lot of different options in the mixer here. You can right click here in the mixer and see a lot of different things you can do. Same thing goes here with the routing of the signal. So let's say that we now have all of our instruments here. You can see that these instruments are routed to this instrument. So let's get rid of that. Now you can see that, let's say that let's get rid of all of these here like that. All right, so now you can see that this track goes through a cable that is kind of invisible here and goes to this track. So what that means is that the sound that comes through this track goes through the master, right? So then we have the same thing there, same thing there, and same thing there. So what you can do here is to route, let's say I want to route all of the drum signal here. Let's say that I want all of these, let's say just the drum section here. I want all of the drum sounds to be routed through insert 1, which will make our drum bus here. I can do that by just selecting them as I did before with the Control or Command click and just dragging them over like that. And then I can just right click on our track that we want it to be routed to and just press on route to this track only. And now you can see that the signal is routed through here. So then if you go to the insert, you can see that the insert itself is routed to the master. So the signal will now travel, all of these 4 mixer channel signal will travel through to this insert 1, and then the signal will travel through the insert 1's plugins if you have any, and then to the master. So it will actually go, instead of going through the master immediately, it will go through the insert 1 first, and that will make us a drum bus here. Separate these different mixer channels. So you can see we have drums here, then we have some classic acoustic instrument, and we have a piano. So it may be nice to just separate things here. So I can just go and press and create a separator between these tracks. Then we can create a separator between this track like that. So now you can see we have our drum sections here. So these are kind of separated between all of these other mixer channels here. So that is a very basic overview of the mixer. You can see I just tried out the volume here, enabled and disabled the track. I panned it a bit. I create a stereo width here. I can also set the sound to be switched a bit in time with milliseconds, samples, or beats. Yeah, and you can just create stereo width here as well. And you can enable and disable plugins if you have any on, like on this track. So you can do that by just clicking and clicking it again to enable and disable the plugins. To show you here in the mixer is that you can actually change the volume meter here to, instead of a dB meter, you can have it set to a waveform meter. You can do it by going to view here and switch it to waveforms. So now if I play here, you can see that all of these volume meters will show up as waveform meters. That is very handy to use if you want to see how big of a signal you have and where the signal is and all of the other stuff. That is very handy with waveforms. Alright guys, so that is it for the mixer, and I think you got a nice overview of the mixer here in FL Studio, and I'll see you in the next lecture.